what's more difficult in urban markets versus traditional vacation markets is that the booking lead time is so much shorter.
It's a very operational heavy business. What do you think they're getting wrong from the operational side of things, which is your strength, right?
And that can be quite difficult, especially if you're on a rental arbitrage model.
What do you think are some of the areas where operators or property managers tend to overspend?
Once you have that scale in the market, you're going to be able to operate far more profitably than these other companies.
All right, welcome everyone to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. Today, I'm super excited to have Sébastien Long with us, the founder of Lodgeur, and he has been in the industry of hospitality and short-term rentals for many, many years, has worked with some companies that we'll discuss later you have certainly heard of. And Seb, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. Hi, Sebastian. Glad to be on the show, and glad to be able to continue the conversations we've had at conferences, live with everybody.
Absolutely. So Seb, why don't you tell us a little bit about, first of all, your background? What's your background? How do you get into this industry? Just so that we can understand sort of where you come from.
Yeah, of course. So you can probably tell by the accent, I'm not from the US or Texas, where I'm currently based. So I grew up in both the UK and France, actually, because my dad's English, my mum's French. And shortly after I was born, my parents decided to launch a campground. And they've been doing that now for a little while, for 42 years. And that's evolved into, it's primarily a glamping site with a resort style feel with various vacation rentals that are on site. So these tiny homes. So I grew up, in the business, so to speak. Started working for them pretty much as soon as they'd let me. When I was the summer I turned 13, I started, in the kitchens washing up. Worked with them, throughout the summer holidays, all the way up through to when I finished university. And so, from those humble beginnings, washing dishes in the kitchen, I moved then gradually to the sort of front desk, dealing more with the customers kind of coming in. And, by the time I left university, I was managing the business sort of day to day, managing the sort of food and beverage team, the front desk and the day-to-day operations. And so that was great. I really enjoyed that. But I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, my parents said, you should go get a real job, something that's more stable than running your own business. And so I out of university, I got a job working for an international bank. And it was great in the sense that I really wanted to travel with my work from day one. And I got to go live and work in different countries. Sort of every 18 months, I'd move to a new country. So I got to do the travel thing while getting paid to it, which was fantastic. And during that time, I was usually living in corporate housing style accommodation. So we'd been provided accommodation. I was already furnished. And some of the kind of accommodation, was a little bit depressing, if I'm sort of honest. So I did about a decade or so in the banking world. I took a slight break to help my family restructure their business about 11 years ago. And I really enjoyed, I guess, being in that entrepreneur environment where you can just get something done. It's very different to working for one of the world's largest banks, where things are very bureaucratic and take a very long time. And I went back to school to do an MBA, an executive MBA. And during that time, I saw a job posted on LinkedIn, which said, we're looking for people with hospitality experience with an MBA. And I'm like, great, that's me. And so I applied to the job and got it. And it was a role with Sonder back in 2017. At the time, they were a Series B company, and they were starting to expand internationally. So I was the general manager that launched the UK market for them, specifically in London. And I love the experience. And I can tell you it's really a lot more fun to do with somebody else's money than your own. But yeah, I love the experience. I didn't last sort of very long there after, I guess, some, disagreements, I think is a polite way to put it. And when I moved to the US in 2018, I decided to launch my own company doing something very similar. So Lodgeur launched in 2019.
2019. Okay. Okay. And so just give us a sense of sort of Lodgeur, because you do management, you do arbitrage. What was sort of the thinking when you first started? With which model did you start with first? Did you start with
Yeah.
arbitrage or with
So
traditional sort of property management?
we started with arbitrage because it's sort of the accepted model, I guess, in the multifamily industry. So we work with large apartment buildings, typically kind of Class A buildings. And, they sort of understand that they've been doing corporate housing for, 2-3 decades, where companies rent the apartment and then sublet it and try and make more money than they're paying rent. So we started out like that in 2019, started growing, and, something kind of just felt like, sort of a little bit wrong out of it. You're taking somebody else's asset and you're trying to flip it and make more money than you're paying them. Almost feels like a little bit kind of dishonest. So we were never really kind of comfortable with that setup. And it's actually very different to other parts of hospitality. So in the hotel industry, it's either, management models or franchise models. It's sort of, there isn't usually a rental arbitrage model in a hotel. That doesn't really exist. So it's a little bit sort of a strange industry dynamic. And even, for example, in retail, there's often revenue-based kind of components, performance-based components. So we kind of stumbled in, to be honest, into the management model. As you can imagine, Lodgeur is an urban operator. We work in kind of urban core markets, whether it's downtowns, midtowns, those kinds of areas. And when COVID hit, with the travel bans, we shrank, I think, something like 93% in 3 months. All the business travelers, all the leisure travelers just completely disappeared. And we had to close down our largest location because we weren't getting any kind of accommodations on rent. So we negotiated an exit from that building. And we had a whole bunch of furniture which we needed to store. And we're looking at different warehousing sites, etc., running the budget for it. And at the time, no one really knew how long COVID was going to last, what the impact would be. So we were planning on up to 6 months of storage, for example. And then I don't know where, we had this bright idea where this other builder we were working with were being a lot more accommodating. And we said, how about we store our furniture in some of your empty apartments and we see, we can make some money off of this. And so, we literally just stumbled into a management agreement, wrote something up, and that's been going, ever since 2020. And we originally had 3 units at this building, and we now have 50 units. So progressively, we've managed to increase the number of units that we manage. And, we hope to continue growing with that partner and have even more in the future.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Now, if we take a step back, I want to understand sort of some key takeaways or key learnings from, let's say, your time at Sonder, and then we're going to go into sort of the timeline of also you starting your company. But when you look back at your experience, sort of opening a new market for Sonder, what are some of the things that you took home experience wise and learning wise?
So when you go to work for a VC-backed startup, it's all about growth, right? So I think my target was to sign 1,000 units in London within 5 years, which is a massive amount. But at the same time, one of the things that really impressed me about Sonder back then was their focus on interior design. They hired the ex-head of interior design from both West Elm and Decorist, which is an online interior design sort of agency. And they really had a very strong kind of design ethic back then. They were spending quite a bit on it. And I that kind of aligned with my personal kind of interests. I mentioned, I'd spent all these years living in drab and kind of depressing corporate housing. So these felt like spaces that felt great. Now, I kind of felt that there was too much focus on growth at the detriment of operations. This is what we do in hospitality, whether it's short-term rentals, corporate housing, or hotels. These are operationally intensive businesses. You can't automate cleaning a room. There are a lot of aspects of customer service that you can't automate. Even now using some AI, sometimes you still just have to speak to a guest. And to be able to operate profitably, you need to have strong operations. So you need to be able to deliver the service for less than the money you have coming in, and that can be quite difficult. Especially if you're on a rental arbitrage model, like most of Sonder's units were back then. So I'm more, at heart, I've been an operations guy. Most of my banking career was around, processes, operating models, how to make things run not only efficiently, but managing risk and while delivering a great customer experience. And you have to get all of those right, I think, to be sustainable.
What do you think it is that, some of those companies that have sort of taken the approach of saying, we're a tech company. We're a tech company. We want tech, valuations. But then in reality, when you see the fundamentals of their business, to your point, it's a very operational heavy business. What do you think they're getting wrong? Is it just impossible for a property management company or a company in this space to sort of scale to those levels? Is it just they don't have the right procedures? Like, what do you think they're getting wrong from the operational side of things, which is your strength, right?
It's no secret that a lot of companies have branded themselves as tech companies to get higher valuations and everything else. But I think that just sets them up for failure later. We were talking earlier on about Sonder's valuation, now that they're a public company. As of today, it's hovering around the $40 million mark. And, when they were kind of IPOing through a SPAC deal, it was a, multi-billion valuation or something like, over $1 billion valuation. So that's a massive sort of fall. The reality is that operationally intensive businesses usually have higher kind of capital requirements. So it's very difficult to get the kind of margins that you're going to get, for example, in a pure tech company. So yes, you can invest in tech, but you're a tech-enabled business. You're not a pure tech company. It is possible to have a separate tech company with the tech that you build, but I think then you sort of need to have it run separately to the operating part of the company. So then you're almost spinning off the software piece, and your operating company is your user, but they're sort of separate transactions almost. That's how I would see it. And I do think that operators are usually going to make the best software because they understand the kind of problems. One of the problems I see with technology in this field that's available off the shelf is it usually takes it's usually imperfect because everyone has a different way of doing things in our industry. I think there's less standardization. And so consequently, you're often using imperfect software that doesn't work the way you want to do it. So if you're an operator and you build your own tech, you can get something that does exactly what you want. And that's where you can drive more operational efficiencies, for example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, when you look at the P&L of an operations company, property management company, your own company, I'm asking about the P&L given your finance background. What do you think are some of the areas where sort of, operators or property managers tend to overspend, right? Which makes it so that their operation is not profitable, like you were mentioning earlier?
There's been quite a few bankruptcies in the last few years from VC-backed companies. During COVID, you had Stay Alfred, Lyric, and Domio. Most recently, I think Front Desk and Wonder Jaunt are some of the most recent bankruptcies. And one of the things that I saw with some of the most recent ones is if you looked at the list of markets in which they operated and the amount of units that they had in those markets, unit count could be pretty low in a market. We're primarily based in Houston, and we're trying to avoid growth in other markets just for the sake of it. We really want to nail an operating model in a city. And what we're seeing is that the more units you have in a market, the more density you can build, the more that supports a great operational team. If you only have 10, 20 units in a market, you can't afford a full-time operations manager, let alone having backup for, a business that's 24/7. So you need, I think, a lot of the units in the market. I think you need at least 100 units, maybe more, to have those kinds of efficiencies and kind of cover. And once you have that sort of scale in the market, you're going to be able to operate far more profitably than these other companies who may not be able to afford a full-time person. And I'm going to have a lot of third-party operators who are going to be charging more to help them run the business. Now, yes, they may have had other advantages in customer service. To a certain extent, having a lot of units across the company, your customer service team can service them if they have the enough information and a knowledge base to understand how this building in Minnesota is different to that one in London, UK, right? There's quite a lot of nuance that then needs to be built in. So again, the higher the number of units in a market, the more proficient your customer service team can become, because again, there's more density sort of there. It's easier for them to learn that because they're going to be answering those questions day to day.
So trying to open markets, new markets too early, perhaps, is something to avoid.
Yeah, and that's sort of the VC mindset, the venture capital mindset is growth at all costs. Grow a lot, spend a lot of money, you'll figure out how to make money down the line. Now, the problem is these businesses, again, had far more risk. The ones that were doing master leases, if you looked at Sonder's financials during the time of COVID, they paid more in rent than they had revenue coming in. So once they had all the money come in and they paid our rents, they'd already lost money on top of all the other operating expenses that they had during that time. So that's pretty scary if you think about it. And I don't know how many hundreds of millions, or if not over $1 billion or so, that's been spent in that company. They've still never turned a profit. And they're moving away now from master lease. They're going more towards hotel management. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Their investment in tech and everything else hasn't made them more profitable than a lot of other operators. So the question is, do you need your own team of San Francisco-based developers? It's a very expensive headcount. Or is using a PMS solution that's off the shelf. One, it may not be perfect. It may be a lot cheaper and can allow you to be more nimble.
It might do the job, exactly.
Because once you build the tech, you've got to maintain it, which again is another cost, right? So
if you look at, let's say, a company like Sonder, you look at their financials and you take out growth expenses. Well, based on what you were saying earlier, even if you take out growth expenses, but the rent is more expensive than the money that's coming in, then even the fundamentals of sort of delivering the service are just not there. Do you think that these companies are losing money because they're spending too much on growth, or it's also just the fundamentals of the business that are not there?
So, it's a few things. So if you want to grow fast, sometimes you have to sort of hire in advance. So, in some of these companies, they'd be hiring a general manager, an operations manager, and a few other people. They'd have quite a few headcount in the market before
they have the need for it.
The units, for example. And I think sometimes that can be too aggressive. So the question is, as we look to go to more markets, we're sort of thinking, what is the minimum amount of units that we need to be able to be viable in a market? And by viable, I mean, to be able to run it properly, to have the sort of similar service levels to those we have in our home market. And I don't know exactly what that minimum number is. But we sort of think in terms of the amount of people that we have. Initially you do have to have a certain amount of presence in the market, headcount, boots on the ground. Because if you don't, you're going to have issues. So your labor costs are far higher for those first few units. But as you add more and more units, actually, you can better utilize your staff. You're no longer hiring for what I like to call coverage, but you're hiring for efficiency. So let me give you an example. If you want to have a 24/7 customer service team, the rule of thumb is you need six headcount. to provide that. Now, if you look at the cost of that headcount, onshore, offshore, and then you start to think, okay, how much do I make per unit? How much do I allocate to that budget? It's going to be very expensive initially, but as you grow your volume, once you've got those first 6 people in place, if you double your unit count, it doesn't mean you're going to double your team for that. Now, maybe you need another person 9 to 5 during the week, but you don't need another 6 people to double that team. So that's when you start to get into efficiency rather than coverage. So if you're smaller in a market, you're more concerned about coverage. What do I do if there's a problem at 2 a.m. Or at the weekend? How do I solve that problem? But once you've solved that problem with coverage, you're having the right amount of people in place, then you can start to think more about that efficiency aspect. So when you add more units in that market, the operating cost per unit becomes lower and lower because you've already met that minimum amount of coverage.
Interesting. And in your business, when you're thinking about sort of growth, when you're thinking about, hey, let's go out there and find new management contracts or, whatever it is that you want to do to grow your business, are there any rules of thumb that you use to say, hey, how much should I be willing to spend to get, this management contract based on whatever lifetime value you might be assigning to that contract? Or how do you sort of think through that?
And that's a good question. If you look at the traditional vacation rental management space, I think a lot of that has been done through acquisitions. So Vacasa has made, I don't know how many acquisitions, probably over 100 or so. And a lot of the other companies are also making acquisitions. So they're looking at what is the value of the contracts and how much am I paying per contract almost, right? And you're seeing figures in the thousands, if not tens of thousands per kind of property. So they have, I guess, more of this sort of traditional financial analysis view of what are the cash flows, how much am I prepared to pay for those cash flows. There's another incentive too, like as your revenues grow, you become more interesting as a potential acquisition target. So the valuation that somebody gives you is going to be at a higher multiple when you're bigger than when you're smaller. So just by bolting on companies, you don't even necessarily need to do anything to get a higher valuation. So a small company, it might be worth 1 time their sort of, EBITDA, but as they grow, it might be worth 4 times. And then when you're getting to kind of publicly traded level, it might be worth 10, 20 times. So it's sort of the magic of by getting bigger, you automatically have a higher valuation. People are willing to pay more for it. So in the business that we're sort of in, I guess, management agreements, I guess, with multifamily kind of owners it's still a very kind of new thing for them. Even just allowing short-term rentals or mid-term rentals in their properties, there's still a lot of resistance to it. And that's been caused by bad operators. By that, I mean the individuals who think it's a quick way to make money, who are subletting illegally and then have problems, or even some of the larger companies. A number of the companies that went out of business during COVID had terrible reputations with building owners and their property managers because they would have a lot of parties and things like that happening, a lot of rules being broken. So, when we speak to potential owners now, some are like, oh, we're never going to do this again because we did it with this company a few years ago and we had so many complaints from our residents that we never want to do this again. So that's probably the biggest barrier that we fight actually trying to get new business. And so then, when we're looking at a deal and we have, a number of proposals out, we sort of take what the rent would be as sort of a benchmark, and we're aiming to return above market rents to them, because then that becomes something very attractive. If we can return to them 130% to market rent, that's going to have a massive impact on their cash flow. And again, their buildings are valued on their cash flow. So increasing the cash flow and every extra dollar, right, is straight pure profit for them is great. So we have to come up with a percentage mix for them that allows us to kind of operate efficiently and ideally profitably, but also that leaves enough for them to think that this is a great deal. So I I don't know if people are going out there and paying an upfront fee to buildings to do that. Obviously, that requires quite a bit of cash.
Is it?
And what's difficult in is whether it's master lease or management agreements is you have very little assets. Even if you have the furniture, lenders don't see much value in that because it's quite difficult to move. The value degrades quite easily.
Mm-hmm.
So you already have the capital requirements to set up these properties, right? And that may be 10, 20,000 a door on an apartment unit. Plus, you then have to be able to sort of run it. If you're then to pay a high upfront amount, again, it becomes very difficult to have access to all that capital unless, VC funded. So that's the bit that's sort of tough is the great thing about a management model is it really de-risks it for both parties. Now, there's sort of this impression that an owner may have is that, oh, I have a lease that's far more secure. But if the company goes out of business, that lease is worth nothing. The company may not have any assets. It may take a month to go through the bankruptcy proceedings to get those units back. However, when you have a management agreement, it's far more, the risk is far reduced. If you have a bad month, you're not going to go out of business because you pay the owner a smaller amount, right? So, when we do our projections, we're going to have that line for what we think the average building rent is going to be. And then, each month is going to be a slightly different amount. And there may be, 1 or 2 months where they're getting less than market, but there are other months where they're going to be getting far more. So what that means is it's far less risky to sort of have us in their building. And there's also more flexibility of what can happen if there's a problem with the management agreements that are in place. They're also getting a lot more visibility. So we have regular data sharing with them so they can see what the performance is. But a master lease operator isn't going to be sharing any information whatsoever. So, the building owner probably has no clue that they're about to go out of business, right? If anything else. So what I really like about shifting from a rental arbitrage model to management model is you go from being a tenant to a partner of the building owner. And I think that, there's all these, it becomes, a virtuous circle of things. As their partner, maybe their maintenance team works a little bit harder to get things fixed faster for your guests. Maybe you're working hand in hand with their leasing office to refer leads for people who want something more temporary. And, I think it works a lot better together when there's that openness, when you're both trying to maximize the money that the other person is making. That's a lot better. So, we want to make more money for them rather than just market.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious to know your opinion on the following. Traditional, let's say, vacation rental management models are basically, hey, I'm the property manager. I'm going to charge you, property owner, a percentage on the gross booking value that, we generate. I'm curious to know your thoughts on charging sort of a percentage on the gross versus what you maybe see a little bit more on the hotel management side of things, which is, sort of a split, but on the net profits. Do you think that is something that has benefits for the property manager to sort of go based on the profits as opposed to the gross? And sort of what would you say are the pros and cons of each from the point of view of a property manager?
We charge our commissions based on the net. And so by that, I mean, what are the gross revenues? We're going to subtract the channel commissions, the card processing fees, etc. And the reason for that is that's the most fair way to do it.
Right. I mean, OTA fees, credit card processing fees. Yes, you exclude that. But I'm talking net as in, net from the operations.
Well, I mean, that is sort of the net from operation because we're also taking the cleaning fee from that. Now, if you want to go to the operating profit, I think that's potentially more risky, right? Because the money coming in is the money coming in. Now, how efficiently I run my business,
that's another deal. But isn't that how hotel management companies do it? Hotel management companies, don't they take it on the nets,
Well,
on
the
the
agreements
operating net?
are a lot more. They're a lot more complicated. There's a lot more lines to it. So they're going to charge you a direct booking fee, for example, or marketing fee on the stuff that they've sourced from their direct bookings and everything else. One of the other things I'll say in traditional vacational rental management companies, if you look at someone like Vacasa, if you look at all the fees that they charge, a lot of the fees they're charging to the guest and keeping them, they're not even coming to the equation with the owner. So I think they keep things like cancellation fees, obviously all the cleaning fees, pet fees, and that just feels wrong invariably, because these are things that also impact the owner. So we share the cancellation fees. Pet fees are charged in line with the policies that they want. We take a small amount, related to cleaning. So, yeah.
Because when you add up all the fees that a company like Vacasa is taking, you're getting close to 50%.
It's like somewhere between 45 and 50% of what the guest pays. And that's even before you look at taxes and OTA fees. So they're taking a lot from the guest and not giving that to the owner. So, why I think it's important to have that sort of model that's net of OTA fees is because, you could list cheaply on channels with an expensive rate and get more bookings, but you're going to get less money at the end. So by looking at it from that sort of channel agnostic perspective, how much is left, then that sort of encourages us more to optimize the channel mix. It's not a race to the bottom in that sense. So, our job is to maximize the revenues for them and indirectly through us, since it's a percentage revenue share.
What do you think about what's your strategy with regards to some channels being more expensive than others versus sort of your direct booking website? Do you mark up channels that are more expensive, or what's your approach?
Our philosophy is that if guests are going to book through a channel, the price should be the same to them, irrespective of the channel that they use. So whether they use Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, we're ideally looking for what they pay to be the same amount, so that they become someone agnostic. So yes, we mark them up so that the rate seen by the guest is the same on those channels. Now, what we don't have is those markups on our own website. So automatically, it's cheaper for them to book direct. And in that sense, the OTAs can be a fantastic lead gen for us. Savvy guests now realize that the service fee that Airbnb charges isn't going to the host, even though a lot of guests still believe that the host is pocketing that money. So, a little tactic that we have is if whenever a guest asks us for a discount, we explain to them that the service fee isn't charged by us. It's only charged by Airbnb when you use their website to book. And then, the savvy guests will search for you online and find you. And that's why it's really important that your host name or your company name is easy to find. The amount of vacation rental companies that have these really generic names like Beach Rentals, right? You put that into Google, you're never gonna find them online. So I guess it's called that billboard effect. Somebody sees you online on one of these OTAs, and they're like, well, let me check if I can find them online. Whether or not they want to find more information about you, or if they're looking for a better price. That's been a key part of our direct channel strategy. It's that billboard effect, and then also that organic search. Particularly, I think if you're in the midterm kind of segment, the extended stay segment, people don't necessarily know where to go to find those. So a lot of them use Airbnb, but a lot of others are just going online and searching for temporary accommodation, monthly rentals, that kind of stuff.
That makes sense. Now, what do you think are some of the ways in which doing revenue management for midterm type of accommodations is different from doing revenue management and pricing strategy for just traditional short-term rentals?
Well, there's quite a few things, but the big one is there is very little data out there. So for short-term rentals, you have tools like AirDNA, and hotel space, again, you have lots of tools. So it's there isn't, well, at least not that I know of, a database we can access of midterm rental rates. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. If you look at most of that segment traditionally has been corporate housing companies. And, most of these have been going 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And if you ever Google some of their websites and open them, you'll see it's very difficult to get a rate. There is no online bookings. You need to submit an application with your social security number, your employer, and a whole bunch of other information just to find things out, or you need to call them to get information. So it's a lot more difficult. There's a lot less visibility into the pricing. A lot of these are also going to be through kind of corporate contracts, which will be negotiated separately. So from that first starting point, you're not quite sure what the market is. You can look at extended stay hotel rates. I can give you a bit of a benchmark at least. So there are kind of two thoughts in this. You can either continue to use your dynamic pricing tools and apply discounts, whether it's a monthly discount or if you want to have hit some more tiers later, like a 3-month, fee, for example. Or you can have a rate card. You can have a rate card where you have a fixed monthly rate. And that could be a fixed rate through the year, or maybe there's a bit of seasonality into it. We've kind of experimented with both, having a fixed rate card. Some people just like to know what the rate's going to be, rather than it changing month to month. But now, we're primarily using the monthly discount in our pricing software from Price Labs. And I think that usually works. We're keeping an eye on it. So we may change some of the settings for some of the months just based on our own experience of the market. But it still is, it's a little bit of guesswork still, I'd say, for midterm rentals. And what's more difficult in urban markets versus traditional vacation markets is that the booking lead time is so much shorter. So I think our average booking window is less than 5 days. You have people who are booking a year or two in advance in vacation rentals. So my family's business, they have a seasonal business that's open, 4 months of the year. They're getting booking requests sometimes for the next season. Someone called in January for the year after. So we have to ask them the question for which year, this year, next year. And
wow.
Most of their booking volume is months in advance. So it's pretty predictable to the point that you could even decide I'm going to add more units and advertise them and then place an order for them months in advance based on having already. That's pretty awesome. That's a nice thing about a seasonal business. But ours, during COVID, our average booking window was 0. So the average customer booked same day during COVID. It was less than 1. And that even applies, we have people booking, a 3-month stay the day before arrival because, there is availability. So that makes it quite difficult from a pricing perspective because, yes, you hope to sell those long stays beforehand, but it can be difficult to optimize your calendar, right? How much inventory do I make available for these longer bookings versus short stay bookings? So I'm not going to go into it, but there's quite a bit of subtlety in terms of how you have to manage your calendar to optimize for one of them, whether it's short-term rental bookings or mid-term rental bookings.
Right.
So
yeah. Because I was just going to say on the midterm rentals side of things. When the person checks in, can make a difference too. Can have an important impact because of the fact that you might not get the same demand for different. I don't know. Maybe people are looking for a beginning of the month stays, whereas if someone comes in the middle of the month and checks out, the middle of the next month, that's going to leave your half of the next month sort of, empty. I don't know. Is that a consideration as well? Do you have sort of rules that limit when for starting when people can check in?
We're pretty lucky in that we're in a market which has some sensible regulation. So we don't have things like 30-night minimums that are enforced through regulation. So if we have gaps between bookings, we can look to fill them.
You can always fill them.
So we have, we have a really high occupancy rate, and usually people would say, well, your occupancy is too high, you should be charging more. But actually, we see it as because we because we can fill these gaps with short stays, that's why we have a really good occupancy rate. And we tend to optimize more for occupancy, because I think there are certain benefits of getting booked regularly. The OTAs and their algorithms love it when you get bookings. So one of the big risks of midterm rentals is, let's say someone books a unit direct for 3-6 months. Once it becomes available again, it's right at the bottom of the rankings on Airbnb and so on. You're not going to get a booking, basically. It will be completely stale. So then there are some things that you have to do to then try and get it back into the algorithm. So that's why,
And now it's not possible to relaunch listings on Airbnb because Airbnb is going to suspend the new listing the moment they detect that it's a duplicate. So how are you overcoming that nowadays?
And that's the part of, again, all these dynamic pricing tools that are there, you have to remember that they're tools. Then whilst you can set up quite a few rules that make it simpler, there still is a certain amount of manual work that you need to do to understand these things that, yes, okay, particularly if you want to get bookings from certain OTAs. And it's, that's a whole other topic, sort of advanced revenue management techniques, but it becomes more complicated when you're trying to get these two different types. And we sort of see, we have lots of units at a location, and we see each location is going to have a different user mix, and is going to have, differences in, for example, in the revenue management strategies that we have, or the customer acquisition strategies that we have. And that's a bit, I think, which really makes a case for going deep into a market, that you understand the subtleties of that. And as you grow, you're going to be doing more sales type work. You're not going to be relying on OTAs and people finding you online. You're going to have to go out there and find more users. You're going to have to develop relationships with local companies, etc. And I think that comes about by, being in a market for a certain amount of time, having the scale to sort of help them. And that's, these are things that take time and depth in a market, which if you're going for a scattergun approach, that's not going to happen.
Absolutely. I want to talk about that thesis of yours, that study that you did, which is quite interesting, on the marginal willingness to pay, where you're trying to tackle the question, how much more would people be willing to pay for some of this, abstract things, such as, design, right? Interior design. Tell us a little bit more about where this study comes from and what were some of the findings that you still to this day maybe apply in your business.
Yeah, so to give you a bit of context, a few years ago, I was doing an MBA at the University of Cambridge, and we needed to do a project, basically a sort of a thesis. And through some of our marketing classes, we learned about this type of research where companies will basically try and find out what the value is of different features are. So if you're a car manufacturer, you're trying to come up with the different packages, right, for your car model. What do you include in the different packages? What's the price point for them? And so they use this type of research to determine the marginal willingness to pay, which means literally how much more is someone going to want to pay for that. And, so we use this software essentially, and we did these mock Airbnb type listings where there'd be like a photo, a review score, number of reviews, what are some of the key property attributes were. And we recruited a few hundred people in both the US and the UK, and they would click through dozens of these triplets of images saying, which one would they book? And they'll give it a scenario for it and a budget, but they could decide which one that they would book. And what the software did then was to churn out values with the different attributes that we changed. So the genesis for this research was based on my time working for one of these companies. They were going to refurbish 400 of their units. And I was speaking to the project team, and I'm saying, okay, you're doing this because you want to make more money. And they're like, yes. And I go, okay, well, how much more money? and they didn't know. They were going to spend a lot of money, millions of dollars, but they didn't have a target return for it. And that just kind of, really sort of frustrated me. So when I was trying to pick a research topic, I'm going through the academic papers, I'm going through, the business press, and I'm trying to find, okay, what is the value of interior design? Because we all know intuitively that nicer places charge more, but how much more, right? And if you're, if you're a hospitality entrepreneur, and whether you're building or you're doing, a management model where you're just furnishing a place, you need some kind of guidance to decide how much money to put into it. How much should you care about this thing? And, the data actually gave us some pretty kind of interesting results. So out of the key factors that we looked at, interior design was the biggest driver of revenue. So people would pay a lot more money to upgrade to a nicer property. And there was an interesting part there too, because we also asked a bunch of demographic questions to go with that. And people who consider themselves to be design-led will pay an even higher premium than that. So there's a marketing consideration there. Do you want to attract people who value this? Now, some of the other attributes that we looked at was the impact of reviews. Now, there are quite a few papers actually that put a financial value on interior design, on review scores. So there's a Cornell study which I'd seen, which said for every 1% improvement in your customer average review score will give you a 1.42% increase in RevPAR. Like that's a great, reason to link getting a higher review score to because it can translate to higher RevPAR. Where there's nothing that says if you spend $1 more on interior design, you'll get this. And so from this finding was really one of the pillars for when we launched Lodgeur. We wanted to create properties that look nicer because we believe they make more money. They're more likely to be booked and at a higher rate. Now, the thing with design, it's not just about spending a lot of money because you could spend a lot of money and have bad design. So you need to obviously spend it in an intelligent way. And what we found is in the average one bedroom, there are 150 items that we procure to go inside a one bedroom. And we break these down into three categories. There's the furnishing and decor, which usually we customize for that building and for that floor plan. Then there's the homewares and technology. So that's things like the linens, the towels, the Bluetooth speaker, the mattress. We usually use the same ones in each unit unless there's a different price point. So we might put in nicer kitchenware in a higher end property. And the third one is the guest amenities, things that are replenished every time somebody stays. Now, you have 150 purchasing decisions and you have a budget. Maybe it's $15,000. How do you decide how to allocate that? Because what gets people to book is going to be different to what gets them to leave a great review. So our internal design principles are that a property should be stylish, but that it should also be comfortable when you're there, and it should be practical. So we were touring a property recently. And one of the things I always look at is what is there by the bedside, right? Because you go to bed, right? Most people put their phone down. Maybe they have a glass of water or something. And, maybe there's a book, right? So they want somewhere to put it. And the amount of properties that don't have a bedside table or there's nowhere to charge your phone, right? I saw somebody posting on LinkedIn about their Airbnb stay. And they're like, oh, luckily I had an extension cord in my car. I had to go get the extension cord so my phone could be charged overnight. And, it wasn't a short extension cord. It was like a garden extension cord. So these are little things where, I think great design is effortless. You don't think about it as a customer. Like you go to bed, bam, everything's there. You plug in your phone. There's room to have a drink, to put your book there. Where bad design, you notice because you get into bed and you're like, oh, there's nowhere to put my stuff. So those are things which are very sort of subtle. That's not about spending more money or less. It's about intelligent design. And similar thing with, let's say you have $1,000 of extra budget. how do you allocate that? Do you spend more money on a sofa? Will that sofa be better? Or do you maybe get some extra kitchen appliances, the small appliances, maybe put a blender in or something else? So that's a bit that's really sort of interesting. So yes, we know that a great looking property will make more money, but that doesn't tell us how to do it. That becomes through the experience. And, when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars each year on sort of furnishings, you're looking to optimize every single one of those decisions. So in the past, we probably spent, we've spent too little on some items, we've spent too much. So getting that balance just right. And then beyond the customer perspective, we've got to consider our own operational perspectives. So we're looking at how durable do we think this product is going to be? How easy is it going to be to clean or to be taken care of by our team? And all these kinds of different things. So, we're learning to become, have this weird expertise in all kinds of things, like the type of rug that we buy, what's the material, what's the height of the part, all these different things that have, again, impacts on our operations. And yeah, it's kind of a fun challenge, optimizing that each time.
It's interesting that there's guest-facing considerations, but also sort of back-end operational considerations to each of those. How many, you said decisions? How many like decisions?
On average,
150.
There's 150, purchasing decisions. Now, some of these we try to repeat each time, right? So we're not buying different toiletries for every single different unit. So we try to minimize the amount of decisions we need to make new each time, and that means we have more time to obsess about the artwork that's going in there, or the what are the things we put in there. And so with that experience of hindsight of some of our furniture is now 5 years old, we're sort of learning some things as to maybe we invest more on this, maybe we don't need to invest as much. So some items wear really hard. Things like rugs, aren't going to last 5 years. But other items, if you get the right coffee table, that can last 5, 10 plus years. But if you get one with a cheap surface, as and get scratched and damaged in year one. So maybe you decide to spend a bit more and get a marble top or something that's gonna be really durable. So that's the bit which is the fun challenge as an operator, is how do we get it right? How do we get the best bang for buck in terms of durability, but also the ability to attract bookings and great reviews?
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting approach with regards to the study, as far as seeing with sort of real people, hey, are they willing to pay more if the properties have such and such attributes versus not? I think that also another approach that's interesting is just looking at, say, in different dynamic pricing tools, you can find data on what percentage of the bookings versus what percentage of the listings have a particular amenity, right? And that can also be a way to sort of identify those kind of like, maybe amenities that you would have not thought of. You would not have thought of them. You would not have thought of, hey, I need to have well, maybe you would have, but maybe you would not have thought that having a hairdryer was as important. But then you look at the data and you're like, wow, most of the bookings happen with listings that have a hairdryer, but just a tiny proportion of the listings have a hairdryer. Therefore, that's a sort of area of opportunity.
Yeah, and it's you really need to understand who your users are going to be. One thing we noticed during COVID, our clientele shifted from being primarily short stays. So before COVID, 91% of our guests were short stays, 9% was staying a month or more. So in terms of the total amount of nights occupied. Now, that's completely shifted. Nearly 75% of our occupancy is guests staying at least a month, and the rest is made up of short stays, sort of filling those gaps between the longer bookings. Now, if you're staying, a couple of months, you're going to be using the kitchen far more than if you're staying for a weekend, right? So we are spending a lot more now in the kitchens. So we have high quality cookware. We have nice tri-ply steel, really heavy kind of pots and pans. As soon as you pick it up, you're like, oh, this is not a cheap pot or pan. We have a lot more small appliances. We always had like a electric kettle and a toaster, but now we have things like a slow cooker, Some of my latest units, we put in air fryers because we noticed a lot of people were bringing air fryers with them. So there's a lot more things that we put in there. We have another location that has a lot of cancer patients because it's near to, the nation's top cancer treatment hospital. So for that location, we have things like wheelchairs, walkers, shower chairs. Again, things that are designed to make them stay more comfortable. They really like recliner chairs. Again, so understanding who's going to use your property is going to impact the design decisions that you make. So that location attracts more medical patients. They're sort of older. So I'd say the interior design is a little bit more muted than our younger kind of facing locations. So again, knowing that great design can make you more money isn't as useful as you'd think, because you then need to think, okay, how do I use that insight to create something that delivers on it? So yeah,
that's the tricky part.
And if you're in a market where people are super cost conscious, so one of the things that we found is that design mattered less to people who are very cost conscious. They were actually more interested about things like the review scores, the amount of reviews that they had. Because they were more cost conscious, there was a greater sort of fear of loss for the money that they did have. So again, another marketing insight that came through there. And there's a lot of little things like that we sort of found by taking that scientific approach to design.
No, that's super interesting. Now, I want to close, Sebastian, with just an understanding of your perspective or your point of view of where the short-term rental industry is at as a whole. If you had a crystal ball, what's coming? Where are we at? What do you think is going to be happening in the coming months or years? As we keep talking and hearing more and more about perhaps saturation, supply that has kept growing tremendously versus demand that has sort of not grown at the same pace, and regulations becoming more and more of a thing. What's sort of your take on all of this from a macro perspective? Where are we and where are we heading as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, of course. Now, it's easy to forget that whether it's vacation rentals, short-term rentals, corporate housing, this is something that's been around for a very long time. Airbnb did not invent this market, but they did make it a lot easier for people to acquire customers, because that was always the difficult thing. Is if you had a property in the past, before the internet, how did you get people to book it? You didn't have the money to spend to have people find you. And that just basically reduced the sort of barriers to entry, because you could instantly get it advertised. And so what we found, of course, is Airbnb made it very easy to list properties. There were people that listed them when they didn't have permission to, whether that was due to local regulations or to the lease agreement that they signed, etc. So those are part of the things that caused the ire of regulators. Airbnb also, they didn't make it easy for themselves, because they would refuse to collect occupancy taxes unless they were sued by cities and different districts. So that, of course, irked the hotel operators, because it's an unfair competition if the provider you're competing against isn't collecting hotel occupancy taxes. If they're not doing that, they're probably not paying income taxes either. So, regulation is an important thing, and often it comes around taxes, right? If everyone's paying taxes, then you have a fairer playing field. Now, you've mentioned kind of oversaturation. Yes, there are probably places where there's been more properties than would make sense. I was speaking to some people at Airbnb, and we were discussing there's a building in Austin. It's run by Nativo. Don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a condo building where everyone's allowed to rent out their units. And I believe for the first 2 years, Vacasa had the exclusive management contract on that building. But after it expired, a whole bunch of people were doing it for themselves. And what happened is they were suddenly all competing with each other, and prices were being driven down because everyone was trying to get a booking. And then as prices go down, you tend to get quality problems. So in terms of trends, one of the things that I see is that a lot of amateurs in the space assume that Airbnb is doing everything for them. So they assume that Airbnb is collecting and remitting taxes. They assume that Airbnb is properly screening the guest and that they provide insurance. Now, that's not always true. So in some markets, you have to collect your own hotel taxes. While Airbnb may screen some people, you can change your name. So I could go in and put Mickey Mouse. Even if I've supplied my identity documents, it lets me change my name, for example. So, and if you ever have a dispute, Airbnb is not going to give you the information from the ID. You'll probably have to be requested by the police or somebody else. And so one of the things, actually from my banking background, which I never expected to be so relevant in this industry, was I spent the last 3 years working around financial crime and compliance. So it's all about knowing who your customer is. And so, from day one, we've screened our guests. So what does that mean? It means we ask for their ID up front, and we check it. We run a background check. We make sure they are who they say they are. And that is something which I will tell every host that they should do. That's a piece of advice I'm happy to give them. We use a solution called AutoHost that automates a lot of that. So when a guest books, they get a link to do an online check-in, and they supply their ID. You can also set a security deposit hold if you want to. And so what we find is that by not becoming an easy target, we get a higher quality of guests. We make it very easy for people to book on an OTA or through our website. So you can search and book on our website 24/7. You can book a 3-month stay. You don't have to pay for all up front. You pay a small deposit or maximum 1 month. But we introduce some of the friction after you've booked. So we want to make sure that you are who you say you are. So if you think about it, when you go into a hotel, before you get keys or the key card, you have to go to the front desk, you have to show your ID, they're going to swipe your credit card and put a hold on it. We just do that sort of remotely before people arrived. So I think that hosts need to be a lot more aware of some of the risks that sort of happen. So whether or not that's in terms of properly screening their guests, taking precautions for credit card fraud if they're taking direct bookings, I think that safety is going to be more and more important. So you'll see, evangelists like Justin Ford from Bruceway always talking about the safety of the units. So what can you do to make sure that guests actually have a safe place to stay, not just a good-looking place that's comfortable and practical? Really, it's going to be about the professionalization of the industry. So one of the other hypotheses that we had for when we launched Lodgeur is that most of the inventory on Airbnb is run by amateurs in terms of the number of listings. And you really don't know what kind of experience you're going to have. You don't know the quality of the bedding, if it's clean, all these different other things. And, 100 plus years ago, the same thing was happening in hotels. And that's when you had entrepreneurs like Conrad Hilton and Bill Marriott. And what they realized is that if you provide a consistent branded experience, people will trust you and come back. And we've always believed that in the short-term rental space, there are going to be trusted brands that are going to develop. Some people like the quaintness of interacting with their host and getting to know them, but I'd say that's really a minority. The parallel in the hotel space is bed and breakfast, where you chat with your host and everything else. Most other people, I think, just want a quality experience, reliability when they're booking. And so that's why, a brand is important. I'd often prefer to book with a brand than a complete amateur, someone I don't know anything about. So there's quite a few things that were sort of broken down. But I think if you want to get ahead of regulation, then everybody needs to do the fair part in terms of paying their taxes, making sure that they're screening guests so they don't have problems. I think that consumers the standards that they expect are going to be higher and higher. Because every year there's an inflation in consumer expectations, right? So I've seen this in my family business. When they first started, people were happy to sleep in tents. So they probably slept on the floor or something else. Then over time, they would get an inflatable mattress. Then maybe they would be staying in a trailer. Now they want air conditioning. They want a pool. They want more and more. They want fast Wi-Fi. These are things that are very different. And, my dad complains as to how guests on how they used to, right? They want more and more comfort. I'm like, well, yeah, that's what happens, right? We want more than we did the year before.
Yeah, no. And with regards to the brand component that you were mentioning, like the importance of, or I guess the gap that there is out there in terms of a trusted sort of brand on the vacation rental side of things that can become as recognizable as Hilton, as Marriott, etc. I'm curious, what do you think is Airbnb's take on sort of, that, property management companies trying to build their brand, trying to take traffic that's coming from Airbnb and then, make sure that if the guest wants to book again, it goes through their direct site, given that most of the inventory in Airbnb is from hosts and property managers and professional operators represents a small proportion of that inventory. What do you think? Do you think Airbnb sees those professional operators as, in a way, a threat?
I wouldn't say they're a threat, no. Well, for a start, professional operators are going to have far more listings on their site. They're going to bring far more business to Airbnb than an amateur will do. That's because they, usually going to have high quality sort of listings. They're going to invest in photography. Usually they're going to provide a decent, consistent experience. Now, again, not all operators are going to do that, but there's a certain standard that you expect. Yes, there may be a bit of a trade-off sometimes in terms of that individual experience, which some people want. But I think, Airbnb, if you look at their latest earnings call, for them, it's still all about growth in the sense that they have a lot of places where they don't have many listings, and they want more and more of
and
those.
They're trying to get more and more hosts. They're trying to get hosts.
And, there are some places which are probably can't sustain that sort of level, and that's fine, I think, particularly with a high interest rate environment and everything else. That's going to sort of remedy itself. But let's be clear, your typical short-term rental or extended stay rental is a different product to a hotel room. It's not either or. There's a place for both in the marketplace. And I really think that people book hotels based on a different use case to a short-term rental property. So, this market is here to stay. Regulation, of course, is always a risk. Again, that's going to favor larger operators. So if you look at Sonder's strategy in New York and cities like London, it's to get properties where they can get a hotel license, even if it is essentially an apart hotel. There are ways around regulations, which is getting a hotel license. Now, a small host can't do that, or aspiring host, but a larger company can. So yeah, I'm positive. I think professional operators help Airbnb. I think that people will. I still use Airbnb to book, versus going direct at times, because there are times when you're like, well, maybe I want a little bit of an insurance policy in between if I'm not 100% sure, right? Now, if the host has got 100+ reviews and they're all 5-star, and I'll usually trust it, but occasionally sometimes you'll take a bit of a gamble, right? Roll of the dice. So in those situations, it can be worth paying, 15% extra just to have a bit more peace of mind, in theory. So yeah, I don't think the brand thing is particularly a concern for them. If anything, it grows the market, the more awareness there is. So I don't know if you saw the news. Airbnb said that the Barbie house they'd set up got more press than their IPO. And so that's why they've launched all these icon listings. It's all about PR and being talked about in the news, ideally for more fun stuff than the other things. Now, the more professional operators you have in the space talking about it, they sort of grow again. They grow the market. And I think the opportunity, there's still a massive amount of growth out there. We're very big fans of the midterm rental segment, the 30+ nights, because it's a really underserved. People don't want to stay in a hotel for weeks on end. It's not a nice experience. So they need a home-like product. And that only exists with the types of properties that you see on sites, OTAs like Airbnb.
Love it. Well, listen, Seb, thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for sharing all those insights. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. I could keep you here for hours and hours. Trust me. But yeah, where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn is an easy place. So linkedin.com, I think /in/Seb Long, and I can share the link with you.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
easiest
We'll
place.
make sure to put it up there too.
Yeah, or through our website, lodgeur.com. Again, people can send us an inquiry form there, or they can, search and book for property 24/7. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sebastian, for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Absolutely. See you soon.
All right. Cheers then. Bye.